Hi there, my higopico friends! You're about to learn how to illustrate a character design in Affinity Designer version 2. Stay watching until the end and I'll show you how to create a custom frame mockup for the illustration we're about to make. Feel free to download this sketch in the description and let's get started. After you open the sketch in Affinity Designer, lock the layer so that you wouldn't accidentally move it and lower its opacity. To create the head, use the ellipse tool while pressing and holding Ctrl plus Shift to draw a perfect circle. Once you have placed it correctly over the sketch, convert it into curves so you can adjust the nodes and give the circle a slightly imperfect shape for a more organic look. For the ear, use the pen tool to draw the initial shape. Switch to the corner tool to round the top node of the ear. Remember to click Bake Appearance every time you use the corner tool. This will create additional nodes, ensuring that the curve maintains its shape even if you scale it up or down. Create a new layer for the ear and insert it inside the main layer. Use the node tool to adjust the nodes and refine the shape of the ear to your liking. Send the head layer to the front. Copy the layer for the first ear, flip it horizontally and position it over the second ear on the sketch. Group both ear layers together and align them horizontally to the center of the head. Using the ellipse tool, create an eye. This time, make it an oval rather than a perfect ellipse. Convert it to curves and adjust the width of the stroke using the Stroke Width tool. Next, use the pen tool to draw a new curve on top of the eye and blend it with the ellipse, again using the Stroke Width tool. Finish the eye by creating the pupil with a small highlight. For this, draw two ellipses, one larger and black, the other smaller and white. Group both layers of the eye, copy the group, flip it horizontally, and position it over the other eye on the sketch. For the muzzle, use the Heart tool and increase the spread. Draw a simple mouth with the pen tool as well. Here are a few more ideas on how you could draw a muzzle and mouth if you'd like to experiment further. Once finished, align the head, muzzle, and mouth horizontally to the center. I added this curve as a small detail, thinking it would nicely contrast against the colorful background I plan to add later. After adjusting some nodes, insert it into the layer that makes up the cat's head. I forgot to do this in this step, so I'll do it later, but you can go ahead and do it now. Once you're done, add some whiskers using the pen tool in line mode. In this mode, you can create a straight line after placing the first node, and the line will automatically terminate after the second node. This way, you won't need to switch to the Move tool, deselect the current layer, and switch back to the Pen tool every time you want to create a new whisker. Adjust the strokes with the Stroke Width tool as needed. Just 3 days before Affinity released their latest update, I was thinking how cool it would be to have this tool available. I was excited to see it included in the new version. I'm curious to hear what you think about the Stroke Width tool. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Once you copy and paste the whiskers, group them and align them horizontally to the center with the head. Before you begin drawing the cat's body, remember to switch the pen tool back to the pen mode. If you need to manipulate the nodes before closing the curve, you can do so by pressing Shift and adjusting the handles, as I'm demonstrating here. Use the pen tool to create a curve that emphasizes the chest. Insert this curve into the layer for the body. Round the nodes with the corner tool and click on Make Appearance. Next, create a back leg and insert the layer into the body layer. Then create a separate layer for the paw and insert it into the back leg layer. Afterward, create both front paws and insert them into the body layer. To complete the outline of the cat, create a tail and insert a layer for the tip. Now, let's set the cat aside for a moment and focus on creating the colorful fill. Open a new document containing 4 circles, each showing a color from the palette. Begin by placing the circles on the canvas so that they overlap each other and extend beyond the canvas. It's important to ensure that no white color is visible between the circles for the next step. Select all the ellipses, open the layer effects, and apply Gaussian blur. By sliding the radius to the right, you can achieve a blur of only 100 points. But for blending the circle smoothly, you may need a higher value. So feel free to manually type in a number greater than 100. You can also enlarge some circles or adjust their positions to ensure they cover any background color coming through. If you prefer more vivid colors, open the Selective Colors Adjustment panel located at the bottom and adjust each color individually. Ensure that the selective color layer is placed above all the ellipses to see the changes in all colors at once. Create a copy just in case you would decide to make some changes later. Hide one of the layers, right-click and choose Rasterize. Create a gray square. Ensure that the size of the square is easily divisible by the size of your canvas. For example, if your canvas is 1000 pixels big, make each square 200 or 250 pixels big. Create 3 more copies and position them to form one large square. Adjust the lightness of each square to ensure there is enough contrast between them. Group all the squares together. Create a copy and place it next to the first group. Rotate it while holding Shift to get some variety in lightness. By holding Shift, you'll rotate the square 15 degrees with each rotation. To create the next line, always copy the last 3 squares first, place them below the last line, and then copy and paste the first square from the previous line. This way, the colors won't be too repetitive. Send the rasterized layer to the front and change its blending mode to color. You can also slightly decrease the layer opacity. You can find this marble texture in the stock photos directly in Affinity Designer. Place it over the top of the canvas, change its blending mode to soft light and decrease the layer opacity. Next, create a black square on top of all layers and add noise in the colors panel. Add a soft 3D effect to each group of squares. Then export the entire artboard as a JPEG. Insert the JPEG into the document containing the outline of your cat. Place the JPEG into the layer of the cat's head and scale it down as needed. Sample a lighter color from the JPEG for the stain on the cat's face, ensuring it contrasts well with the background. Later, I'm going to make it lighter and place the darker squares of my JPEG under it. Once the JPEG is inserted into a layer, remove the black stroke. In terms of the ears, I decided to scale it down a bit more in the top part of the ear so that the two layers that create the ear wouldn't blend in too much. I've decided to add a highlight to each ear. I simply copied the smaller part of the ear, deleted the fill, and selected a light color for a stroke. Then I removed the unnecessary part of the ear by selecting the Node tool, pressing Ctrl and clicking on the curve at the spot I wanted to delete. Afterward, I adjusted the stroke width using the stroke width tool. As I mentioned earlier, I decided to give the stain on the cat's face, the paws, and the tip of the tail a lighter color for more contrast. Now you just need to add a fill to the cat's body, back leg, and tail. I try to position it in a way that shows a bit of the orange hue as well, so the cat wouldn't be only pink and purple. As in the previous steps, remember to remove the black stroke after adding the fill. For the eyes, I sampled the orange color from the JPEG to maintain a consistent color palette and made it very dark. I'll use the same color for the stroke of the eyes, mouth and whiskers. For the white part of the eye, I used a gradient color using the same orange and the lightest color in the illustration. I also added some noise to the orange. To finish the left eye, I used the Style Picker tool. Simply bring up the tool. Ensure you don't have any previous style loaded. If you do, click on Unload in the top left corner. Then click on the eye you want to load the style from. And finally, click on the eye you want to apply the style to. I applied a gradient fill to the muzzle using a darker color and add in some noise to enhance the texture. Next, it's time to add some shading using pixel brushes. Switch to the pixel persona and create a new pixel layer for this step. I'm using the Airbrush 01 brush from the Sprays and Sputters category. Gradually add shadows to the ears, around the cat's mouth to emphasize the stain, under the head, at the bottom of the chest, under the back leg, and at the tip of the tail. Change the blending mode of each pixel layer to color burn and decrease its opacity to soften the shadows. I prefer using the color burn blending mode because it darkens the base colors based on the blend colors applied on top. Also, create a slight shadow to separate the front paws. After completing all the shading, group all the layers that make up the cut and switch back to the designer persona. The final step is to add the background. Create a green square under the cut, slightly smaller than the canvas, and align it both horizontally and vertically. To ensure your cut has enough contrast against the background, turn on the grayscale mode for a quick check. If you can't find the grayscale mode, go to View, View Mode, and select Grayscale. Alternatively, you can add this option to your toolbar by navigating to View, Customize Toolbar. From there, drag the Grayscale option to your desired spot on the toolbar. In the Layer Effects panel, add an outer shadow. Change the color to white, set the blending mode to normal, adjust the opacity to 100%, and increase the offset. Next, copy the entire layer and select the bottom copy. Change the settings for the outer shadow on this layer. Sample the background color, then decrease the saturation to around 6 and the lightness to around 4. Set the blending mode to multiply, reduce the opacity, and increase both the offset and radius. Our cat illustration is finally done and I've exported it as a JPEG. As promised, I'm going to show you how to create this custom frame mockup in Affinity Designer. Open a new document 25 by 19 centimeters big. Then create a square that's 12 by 12 centimeters and change its color to black. Make sure to align it vertically. With the square selected, bring up the knife tool. Slice the square from the bottom left corner to the top right corner, while holding the Shift key to ensure a straight cut. Next, slice it again from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. You'll end up with 4 triangles, which you can then group together. Now let's create a white square on top of the black triangles. Make sure it's aligned both horizontally and vertically. Next, we'll add a 3D effect to each of the black triangles individually. Go to Layer Effects and choose the 3D effect. Set the radius to around 40, soften to around 12, diffuse to 93, and shininess to around 84, specular to 34. Don't forget to adjust the direction of the shadow too. Next, copy the white square and make the copy smaller. This smaller square will be where we insert our illustration later. Now, let's add an inner shadow to the larger white square. Select the larger square, go to Layer Effects, and choose Inner Shadow. Set the blending mode to multiply, offset to 35, radius to 47, opacity to 45%, and angle to 315 degrees. This will give the larger square a nice, realistic shadow effect. Let's add an inner shadow to the smaller square as well. Select it, go to Layer Effects, and choose Inner Shadow. Set the offset to around 18, radius to 31, and opacity to 69%. You can always tweak these settings later if needed. Now insert your illustration into the smaller white square. I've decided to name my cat Cupcake because that's definitely what I'd call my cat if I had one. Next, find a photo of a wall that you like from the stock photos and position it on the canvas. Once you have it in place, send it to the back in the Layers panel. To keep everything organized, group all the layers that make up the frame. Rename this group as Frame, then rename the photo layer as Wall. Now let's adjust the levels of the wall photo to enhance the contrast between the blacks and whites. Go to the Adjustments panel and choose Levels. Adjust the sliders to increase the contrast, making the blacks darker and the whites brighter. The exact adjustments will depend on the specific photo you've chosen. To create the illusion of light coming through a window, start by creating a rectangle on top of all the layers. Sample the color for the rectangle from the photo to make it look softer and more realistic. Next, set the blending mode of the rectangle to multiply and lower the layer opacity. Then go to the Layer Effects panel and add Gaussian blur. The amount of blur will depend on the distance from the light source and the sharpness of the light. Copy the rectangle several times and adjust the width of each copy to add more variety. Position all the rectangles where you want the light and shadows to fall. Once you're happy with their placement, select all the rectangles and click on Add to merge them into a single layer. I've just inserted 2 leaves from one of my other illustrations and now I'm going to arrange them into the mockup to make it look more interesting. I position the leaves, pointing them towards the frame to guide the viewer's eye towards the cat. To avoid them looking exactly the same, I'll scale and rotate the leaves a bit. Next, let's add Gaussian blur to the leaves to make them blend more naturally. I'll also lower the layer opacity to soften their appearance. Once you're done arranging and adjusting the leaves, let's move on to the final touch. Open the Curves Adjustments panel, pull the top node a bit higher to make the highlights brighter, and then pull the bottom node down slightly to make the shadows darker. By doing this, you'll create the impression of a bright sunny day behind the window, enhancing the overall feel of your mockup. The final step is to add an outer shadow to the whole frame. I forgot to sample the background color for the shadow, but feel free to do that in your mockup to see if you get better results. Set the offset to 24, radius to 45, opacity to 52%, and angle to 0 degrees. This will give the frame a subtle shadow, making it stand out more against the background. And that's it. I hope you learned something new in this Affinity Designer tutorial. If you're looking for more tips to speed up your work, be sure to check out my other videos. For example, the one where I show you what you can create with the Shape Builder tool. I love hearing from you guys, so don't be shy and let me know in the comments what you would like to learn more about. See you in the next video. Ciao!